Hello, hello. We're back for a new year.
Hello, hello.
First
It's
things
our
first.
first time back, yes.
Happy New Year 2022 to everyone. We're back to answer your questions.
And actually, I'm actually trying to clean the house for once.
See, if you had said that, no one would have noticed, right?
New Year's resolution, right? You know, I decided to stop neglecting Dash.
Yeah, I know, right? So we got a couple of little sort of housekeeping things to do, and then we're just going to have a complete AMA session today. We'll see how far we get. We've had some questions come in online, and we'll see how far we get. But a live chat is always open, and if you have a question, please make sure you put a Q in front of it so we can find it.
Also, one of the big things that we're doing, though, we have two of the best question answers in Stack Overflow. I'm not going to get into a thing about who is the best, because when you really get up there, we have to, work with people like Gunther, who has, like, I don't know, is he over 500,000 Stack Overflow points yet?
I know he's getting there for sure.
He's up there, and Remy is chasing him. Unfortunately, we couldn't get either one of them here, but we've got a couple of the other wizards, and they're going to talk about questions they see a lot. So
before we get any further, a little bit about us. So my name's Sam Lightfoot. I'm a community leader and also CTO at Dev Angels London. We're a small development agency. Scott?
I am Scott Stahl. I am also a community leader, organizer of GDG Cleveland, one of two. Hello, Nate. That's my co-organizer. Also, I am a slave at Dev Angels London.
Oh, thanks. We're just not with us today. We have a few other people introduced as we bring them on. We've also, I'm also actually a co-organizer of Flutter London. I keep forgetting to mention that, but George is mainly handling that. But hopefully, we're going to get this year. We're going to get back into the Flutter meetup zone and get everyone involved. And we've also got some do's and don'ts. Scott.
All right, the short version: be decent to people. That's basics in the world. Yes, I do realize it's YouTube. Still, don't post anything that's adult content. Don't be rude. Don't be offensive. I think we all pretty much understand what offensive means. Don't advertise your business or promote other people's businesses. Don't keep posting the same question over and over and over and over again. It's a sure way to get ignored. And also, no harassment of any kind. This includes incels, bigotry, whatever. And as an aside, I've been told to say this more nicely. Yeah, whatever. The different channels within the Flutter community, the Humpday Q&A, the Flutter community Slack, and a number of others, we share information. When one person gets banned from one place, we tell everybody else. So if you get kicked from one, don't be surprised if you're unable to log into the rest. And that has actually really helped keep the community pretty decent. We tell people this ahead of time, and they normally don't break too many rules, so we haven't had too many problems. It's one of the reasons it's such a nice place to be.
Okay, let's get into it. So our first guest, Randall. I think we have a Randall who's used to answering questions. Randall, welcome to the stream.
Yeah, welcome back. I've been the secret guy backstage for all the Flutter Apprentice shows that we've had.
Thank you so much, by the way, for handling the questions and doing with that. It really helped the show move forward.
Now we need somebody like me for this show. But we
had dozens of questions in the Flutter Apprentice feed, and Randall was back there putting them into a spreadsheet.
Yep.
So that we could go through
and
find
them.
them.
Some of them, right?
Yeah.
Well,
anything that wasn't topic related, today's topic, I tended to pick up on myself because I thought, well, why give that to the experts? Let me do it.
Well, and the other interesting thing that people may not realize is that Randall had to mark what time these questions came in.
Yeah.
Because we would be talking and then we would get to Q&A half an hour later, and you're frantically scrolling up trying to find this question.
Yeah.
You know, but when he marked them with the time, we were actually able to find them. So anyway,
talk about experts. We have another one with us.
Yes.
Mariano, welcome
Oh.
to the stream.
Mariano.
Everyone, hi, how's it going?
It's been a while. It's been a while. Happy New Year and all that.
Happy
Yeah.
New Year, everyone. Happy New
Yep.
Year.
Yes.
It's been a while. I try to get like a little bit of rest of 2021, a little bit crazy year. So
There you go.
and now fresh new start for 2022.
You know, one of these days we're going to get everybody on the same time zone.
Mm-mm.
You know?
Good luck with that.
And yeah, we're
Do you know-
pretty
do you
close
know-
to having everyone on different continents right now.
You know how we fix that, right? We just set a global precedent where everyone just uses UTC from now on.
Hey, the
And
pilot.
it's only because you
everyone's
live
on
in
the same time
UTC.
zone. I mean,
Yeah, 'cause
Pilots
Simon
in,
lives there.
Yeah, that's true. No, you live in UTC and sometimes UTC -1.
+1.
+1, sorry, I got it backwards.
And we don't use that because it's so
good old British
confusing.
summertime.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't
right.
change anything. We don't have summertime. So
And this
Right.
is why we need one time zone for everywhere. They just keep things simple.
Just to give you an idea, folks, I'm in the United States Eastern time zone. Randall,
West Coast.
Western, Mariano.
South America. So
South
I'm
America.
GMT -3. Yeah.
And UK. Yeah.
And so yeah, Simon's in London.
Yep. We represent the world, the four corners of the world.
Yeah,
There's a
well-
bit more to world than that.
Yeah,
What-
no one
what
else
we're
exists
actually-
in the planet. Yet
What we're
no
actually
other
doing is
countries.
testing the backbone of the internet to see if we can keep everybody from, you know, any packet loss over here.
Oh, dear.
I should probably, since I haven't been on screen for a really long time, I should probably introduce myself again. I'm a GDE, a Google Developer Expert, which means that Google has blessed me to the point where I sort of sit between Mountain View and y'all. So I get to be a liaison. I get to help out. One of the things I do is I specifically produce screencasts about Dart and Flutter. Have a channel for that. I produce. I'm also participate in programs like this, but I also go to as many remote Flutter meetups as I can. So I remember one weekend about 3 months ago, I was in 3 different places in Africa, all during the same day. So that was wonderful. It was a lot of fun.
Did travel
meeting so many
get you have
people.
a hospital? Did travel put you in a hotel or a hospice?
Well, the travel put me online. So
It's virtual, isn't it?
Yeah,
Most of
yeah.
the time, you don't want to travel anywhere.
right, and so I'm
Yeah,
actually going to get
off the
sad when
internet.
I'm going to get sad when they start doing everything in person because that means I have to travel a lot more.
Well,
So that's great.
Well, you know, I don't think you're the only GDE here.
Oh yeah, of course. I was just about to point that out, but
Mariano?
go ahead. Yes.
I'm also a Flutter GDE, which means people ask you, so Google pays you, and not the opposite.
Yes.
For free.
You're effectively paying Google with your
You
time.
you beg for
Exactly,
money
yeah.
so that maybe they'll cover a bus ticket.
Yeah.
They maybe give us swags and all those stuff.
Yeah, this
No,
swag
but
is
we're
cool.
like a
Yes.
middleman, middleware people, which we get information from Google, and we can help developers, we can help companies, we can do cool stuff that people will ask us for a GitHub project later on because they really want to implement on their own. But we have fun in different projects, meetups, and all that kind of stuff, all the good stuff.
I do want to mention, actually, since we just talked about news, briefly mention that if anyone's not aware, the Flutter Vikings conference
Yes.
is going to continue online in February, and there's going to be an in-person event at the beginning of September. So just to let everyone know that we are still going to have an in-person event, but it's going to be later on in the year because of obviously COVID times.
Yeah.
So
We were hoping to have it in person in February, but
Push it to, yeah.
it'd be
Which
stupid
country is
do it
going
right
to
now.
be this one? So everyone is aware of the country.
Norway.
this is it's hosted
In Oslo?
In Oslo, Norway.
Interesting.
Norway or the
and
highway.
A quick shout out here to someone else who has been in front of camera quite a bit, and we've been very glad to have her. Hello, Ezra.
Hello. She's here.
Yay.
So I guess I mean, just want to mention to everyone here that's on the stream, please, ask your questions, and it can be any question, anything to do with Flutter at all, anything to do with Flutter or Dart. Get it in right now, and we'll get to it as we go through the stream. We'll see how long we can go for.
And don't take ask me anything as a broad request.
As in, no, because
Yeah,
We will
Flutter.
What's your address?
Well,
Like,
okay. Let's show an example here.
Flutter or
okay?
Coming from a Stack Overflow, the Ask Me Anything, they took it really literal. A lot of people.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, really.
what's your
So-
favorite coffee?
yeah. If a train leaves Chicago at 4:30 in the afternoon,
Right.
traveling at
If a
65 miles an
woodchuck could
hour,
chuck wood.
yeah,
Yeah, but
So-
even in general, like in a programming world, you say, "Hey, how can I build this company?" And it's like, I think this is a little bit broad for Stack Overflow.
I can answer the first question. I
Okay,
can
well,
answer-
okay, well, hang on, because I've got the first question right here.
Okay, I can do the second one
Okay.
then from Roberto.
I want to show now to the experts who are in the chat. We want to hear what are the questions that you answer like more than 3 times a week. We want to know what those questions are.
3 times
okay?
an hour sometimes.
Okay, yeah, something like that. And to the beginners, you'll be able to get some answers to your questions. Now, I don't, sometimes there are questions that are like right at the very beginning of the docs, or they're answered 100 times on the internet. So what you can do, okay, is something like, how do I parse JSON in Flutter? And then you push the button. Okay, and then boom, you get all these answers. Okay,
True.
and it's right here is even an explanation on a Medium article.
I have a bigger
you might
one.
need to zoom in. You
videos,
might need to zoom
all
in a
kinds
bit.
of stuff.
It's quite small.
Oh, well, sorry about that, but you get the general idea.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to use a little bit of my time to talk about what not to do on Discord and on Slack, because that's where I spend most of my time.
George Freeport,
don't
George was
private message people.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yes, right.
That's one.
Oh, my
because
God.
The rule 1 on Discord for Flutter is do not create or initiate a conversation with someone. Only post public messages to start your questions. And if we know it and have time to answer it, we will. You don't need to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, Randall, I've got a question." Sorry, post your question. I'll see it. The second most. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say on that line, right? Like if we had DMs from everyone, we can't answer them. But then the problem is we answer it once, but no one else has that knowledge. If we answer in a public channel, everyone gets the knowledge.
Exactly.
Right.
That's one reason why it's not about like DMs or anything like that. It's about the fact that when we answer it, everyone that sees their answer gets the knowledge.
We're solving it for the community, not just you. If you want to hire me and have private time with me, that's fine. Start the meter. But if you're gonna take advantage of my free knowledge, it has to be publicly done so that I'm answering not just you, but the other people that are watching.
Yeah,
exactly. And
I would say in the Facebook communities that I'm part of, the most common question is, how do I start with Flutter? And a great start to how to start with Flutter is get into the Flutter website. It's literally has a get start button and an easy, maybe half an hour thing if you're not knowledgeable, but it's really fast. You just download it, and you're good to go. Not only we have
Flutter
an amazing website, we have a new website.
Yeah,
it's pretty.
Have like
they keep
3
changing
years.
Yeah.
But this
I
one
would
is a
show you,
beautiful
but I
one.
don't want to spoil it for you. So go to flutter.dev.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where you get started with Flutter. And what did we do that took down our Twitter handles? Because someone said that.
Oh no! I just took them down temporarily, so we had room on
Marco.
screen.
Yeah, Marco seems to think mine is broken. Should be right.
It might be broken in the description of the YouTube video if it's incorrect there. I apologize.
I didn't know you put it there.
And since
they always go there.
Since you brought up Flutter.dev, I'll say the second most frequently.
There's some random characters for some reason.
And now I lost my train of thought. No. We have a shortcut for this in the Discord because it happens so often. People will ask questions about things that are in the Dart language tour. You are expected to read the Dart language tour before even coming to the Discord. And it's so handy. That one there. We have a shortcut called !tour.
We'll find it here.
URL. Yeah.
which you can find here.
Yes, right.
And the Dart
Which is
website.
Dart.dev. It's kind of like Flutter.dev, but it's called Dart.dev.
Dart.dev. And I tell you, if we see a question that would be answered by that, we do not hesitate to put !tour in the Discord. And the reason for that is everybody should spend the 1 hour it takes to read that if you're a slow reader. It covers so much of the landscape of Dart, which of course is the language of Flutter. So it really helps you understand this isn't just an enhanced JavaScript. This isn't something that doesn't have named constructors and generics and things like that. It does touch on pretty much every high-level thing.
You could do those things, but in the way structure is fluttered, we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell you what we have got now.
One second though, before we go any further on that, let me just show the flow here. We can go from Dart.dev. You click on Docs, okay, and then that's where you find the language tour.
Yep.
And once you get the tour, you can go to Try Dart, and you can actually write Dart in your console, and look, it works.
Yes, wonderful stuff.
I think it's a general thing. Also, when people complain on Stack Overflow that it says, "Hey, why Flutter doesn't return this object or something?" It's not Flutter, it's Dart. That's the language. Go to the tour and learn about it. Because most of the comments that I see is like, "Oh, Flutter's not doing this. Flutter is a UI tool, it's a framework that it uses Dart in order to display and do all this beautiful stuff that we do." But you need to learn Dart and how to do it and how to use it. And with all the good stuff with null safety, a lot of people have problems with null safety and they don't understand what is called optionals or nullables. And they have those issues all the time. You see those in Stack Overflow all the time.
And Discord and everywhere. It's just it becomes very consistent.
Yes.
And so what we also say is that if you the 1 hour that you take reading that tour will save you multiple hours in the next week or two.
Oh yeah.
And will save us multiple hours in the next week or two.
Right.
Sending you to let me Google that for you.
Yes.
I have to say, I'm going to post this in the chat. This is a video for later, but I saw this video. Is a guy who tries new things, and he wanted to try app development.
Oh God, yes.
And this happened last year, and I just saw it. And yeah, he spent like 5 days and built himself like an app and learned. He had no idea about anything to do with development, anything to do with like programming or anything. And in 5 days, he built an app and got it deployed. I think it was 5 days. Built an app and got it deployed to the Play Store. I mean, using Flutter, you know.
Yeah.
Yep. And
okay, so
just shows you
let's try one from the peanut gallery here.
Yeah.
How do we delete an object in Dart?
You don't. You make no references to it. Basically, you just turn off all the things that lead to it, and it will go away.
The nice thing about it is when you leave the page, it wipes it all out. Except there are a couple things that you need to use a little method called dispose, especially streams.
So delete is, so to be clear, like delete is probably a terminology that you get from other languages. Like, so you have like delete in as a keyword in C++ and things like that. That actually needs to destroy the memory that was allocated for that object.
Hold it in memory.
Garbage collection.
Garbage collected language, meaning that once you stop making references to an object, it will do a tidy up in the background. There is, if I remember rightly, Dart has a GC function you can run to force a GC. I wouldn't recommend it.
I don't know.
Really?
That's the nice thing. You see, Dart makes us lazy.
That means you're doing something wrong if you need to go to that thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've got a high memory pressure situation and you're allocating a lot of memory and you need to, then maybe. But
re-architecture.
I wouldn't even go there.
The first thing I would look for there is animations or streams and things not calling the dispose method.
Oh no, you wouldn't get this in any. Like, you would have to be on an embedded platform with a very limited memory to even remotely require it. So, the fact you're using copy with a final, don't even worry. Make the more objects, the merrier. So, interesting enough, I will mention this: the garbage collector in Dart is one of the newest technologies, right? I mean, around, because one of the advantages you have is the garbage collector is shipped as part of your app. So, whereas if you're building an Android app, it's shipped as part of the platform. So you have to wait till you get the next version of Android to get the next iteration of the garbage collector. They make fixes and improvements and performance things all the time. And you're going to get that in your next release of your Flutter app because you'll get the next release of Flutter, right? So that's one thing to mention. So an example of this is, I use this example often, but I do want to mention this, and that is on Android, for example, you don't allocate any objects during on draw of an object because it gets called, let's say, 60 times a second, and it will allocate a lot of objects, and it will cause chaos on Android because it doesn't have a garbage. Well, it didn't have a garbage collector that supported young space scavenging, which is a mechanism where on every frame you can reuse objects using the previous frame.
Now, to be fair, is this the new garbage collector that they were talking about when we were at DroidCon 10 in 2018?
Yes,
because they said they were coming out with a new garbage collector, but at that time, Dart already used Young Space Scavenger and Parallel Mark Sweep.
Yeah, so there's technology that had already been gone out, but still, even now, you can't build an app with allocates in on draw, because on the versions of Android that you want to run your app on will be previous to the garbage collector having that functionality, right? So you have to play the game, but with as I said, with Dart, you don't have to worry. Allocate all the memory you want, and you can deal with it.
And for the vast majority of situations, Roberto, if you're coming from something that is low enough level that you have to worry about garbage collection, you're really going to love it here, because we're lazy. We never really have to think about it. It is abstracted away, and we just don't do it.
We don't need just for the techies here. I'm going to mention one thing. FFI. If you use FFI, you will need to free your memory.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, that's the one case that you are going to have to do it.
The only case, yes.
The only because you're dealing with external libraries that may not have a hold on to the object, may not know how to free the memory for the object.
And for those who don't know FFI, basically that's interfacing with the C++ layer.
Foreign function interfaces. Basically, interface with external code.
I will say, on a simple level, one thing to worry about is, for example, the explanation for why we need to call dispose to not leak memory. And that is one of these things where the parent has a pointer to the child, and the child has a pointer to the parent. Whenever you have that kind of a structure, you need to remove that link before you let either of them go into outer space, or you'll never be there again.
So what this is about is, because both objects have a relationship to each other, the garbage collector cannot free those objects because they're not independent of each other.
Right.
Now, there is some the garbage collector is quite clever about that kind of situation, but if you have those objects and the links between objects get really complicated, there's no guarantee, right? So the whole idea of dispose is to also the fact is, let's say you're creating a scroll controller on every frame, or for whatever reason, right? You're refreshing the screen quite often, you create a new scroll controller. You don't call the dispose in the scroll controller. Now, that means there might be several scroll controllers that are registered to listen to notifications from the platform or something like that, and they receive it, and their event handlers get called because they're not disposed. And then those event handlers will access variables and stuff from your app, but they're no longer attached to any widget or something like that. So various random things can occur. It's the same as, if you add any event listener, you should remove your event listener, that kind of thing. You should pair up. When you add, you should remove. When you listen, you should unlisten, so on and so forth. So dispose is the common mechanism in Flutter, which you call on pretty much all the objects that require you to remove any sort of connection between previous objects.
Yep.
Okay, I want to get to a couple of questions that were in the very beginning, and also I want to point out, Avinash, I can see where you asked the same question twice on the screen without scrolling, so I can see it. You've asked the question twice that fast. That's what we mean by spamming. So don't do that.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. This is an interesting one. This is probably a Simon. Throttling.
That's everything. Go on.
This is, folks, so far, these are not the questions we see every day on Stack Overflow. Come on, this is not the point here. These are not questions we're going to send you to let me Google that for you.
The more complicated questions, that's what we want. We want the complicated questions. What's this? Do you want to read it off, Scott?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Okay, I guess I could have skipped that. Can you please explain about throttling concept in Flutter and its implementation?
Throttling? I mean, that terminology is not quite clear as to what you mean by that.
Yeah.
I think it's the same as would be. There's like simple throttle debounce in the pub. I think debounce is used as a synonym for throttle. Basically, only allows so many participation.
A gated string, basically.
So yeah, look at debounce in the.
There is
a
number
of them.
There's actually a number of different. I think RxDart has a bunch of stuff around this as well for gated streams.
A lot of stuff. Yeah.
I will mention that you can do a simple one. So you can just have a timer. So Dart has a concept of a timer. And you can say, start this timer in the future at this time. So let's say 400 milliseconds into the future. And then if you get another event come in, you just cancel the previous timer and start a new timer. So you're always going to be 400 milliseconds into the future. There's your debounce timer. I will mention that throttling can also come around from memory pressure as well.
Put your old timer. Yeah. Dispose.
To the trash. Yes.
Go on. More questions.
Okay, more questions. Here's an interesting one that I've never thought of. What's the difference between reactive state management and non-reactive?
Well, if you have a class, I'll give an example. If you have a class with a variable in it, it's not reacting, is it? It's not reacting to anything. That's state, right. I mean, you're managing your state, but you're just chucking it into it's like.
That is kind of a fair question, because people do teach that there is a paradigm that came from React, and yes, React was a paradigm good enough that Flutter stole it.
The term
that basically when you touch something on the UI, when you give input, it has logic. The logic changes the state of an object, and then that's reflected in the UI. So what other paradigms are there if you're not doing that kind of a reactive?
It's not reactive at that point. That's the problem, right? So I think the concept of a reactive state management is having objects that you can listen to, and when their values change, something else can occur. So you kind of get this chaining effect. Yep. And specifically in Flutter, that's used to update the UI, which is a really valid point. So in a lot of problems, the reason why a lot of apps use immutable data is because mutating your data and updating the UI is like one of the worst sins, right? Because it means that suddenly magically your UI will change, or values will change on screen because it got a refresh and it used the latest data that was there, right? So many bugs are avoided by just using immutable data and refreshing your screen to the new data that you've created. That's where copy with comes from, and a lot of other concepts around that.
Yeah. But most of the stuff came from mostly the native development on Android and iOS. You have architectures like MVC, and that you pass an interface, and that interface was waiting for whatever happens in your business logic. They will send the information through the interface, and the UI, I guess, would update it by doing set text or something like that.
I mean, the thing is, it's lessons learned the hard way over the years of doing mobile apps, that it's like suddenly all these libraries and platforms come out to try and solve the problem, right? And I think the difference is because the UI is the hierarchy of sort of UI, whereas Flutter uses the sort of reactive UI of where you can rebuild the UI. It has a trickle down effect of rebuilding widgets when required, and I think that is the difference, right, between when you tackle the two. And I think that's where state management comes in for Flutter, and
also how the apps evolve itself. Because 10 years ago, you can pass along doing like a to-do list or like a note thing, and you're the only one using it, and that's it. And now maybe you have people joining into your notes and your to-dos and doing things that update those things, and so on and so on. So how do we battle concurrency? How do we battle having more than one users in the same file and different stuff? And the old way, it was a little bit tricky. Now you can make it more user-friendly by doing reactive.
That's really about app architecture as well. App architecture isn't just having clean code and the code actually passing data around nice. It's also about having code that multiple people can work on at the same time and not be stepping on each other's feet. So
concurrency, big issue. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and one other thing too, if you don't like the state management packages available right now, a friend of ours had something to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah, you can always make your own.
We were joking around. Actually, somebody was joking around about making one, and I said that they should call it Yasms, which is a throwback to SUSE Linux. Yasms, yet another state management system.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you don't like the current ones, you can make a library, an app that is like a grab on top of those state management to make them simple for whatever reason, but they exist. So you have a state management.
Oh, Mariano, we lost Mariano. What happened?
He's not doing state management
that's
very well.
me.
Yes.
I'm not the one doing that. There's people actually doing those things.
Okay,
go.
All right.
Libraries.
We have many more questions, and we're not getting to.
Here's a good question. Actually, this one's good. Yeah. And the thing is that I remember this being an issue over a year ago.
Oh, you geezer.
Oh, man. Okay. Noticing that grid view scrolling performance is poor compared to list view. Yeah. And the thing is, what you should know for one thing is that list view is actually running sliver list under the hood. Mm-hmm. So they're not all that different, but yeah, there's been some questions about grid view.
Answers to that one. First of all, if you're using a single child scroll view, remove it right away, because some people use it to put a grid, to put something else, and so on and so on. If you're going to use a complex UI with a scroll view, use a custom scroll view that is going to use a sliver grid view, which you can use on that one. So if you're using that one, that's going to destroy your
using these widgets inherently, right? And because they are actually custom scroll views essentially underneath, right? They're box scroll view or whatever it's called. But the concept is, do not use shrink wrap. If you have shrink wrap on any of your scrolling widgets, you've done something wrong.
Yep.
Yes. Here's the thing: the single child scroll view, in order to show stuff, they need to pre-measure the whole thing. So that means that the whole thing is loaded in memory. So that means that it's going to run like crap because you're using a lot of memory.
I will mention that I have seen some performance problems on web recently. They have been changed. They're actively working on it. It is beta. So I would suggest if you're having problems, check out a previous version of Flutter. Build your app with that and see if you still got the problem. And you can find out where the problem is and make an issue ticket
and create a ticket. The other one is when you have a grid, you have a lot more items in view than you normally have with a list.
Yeah.
Normally on the web, because the web is horizontal. So you have a list. Maybe you have, like, depending on what you're doing, 3 or 4 items. But if you had a grid, you most likely have 6, 8, 12. And if you're using large image, you can get away with that in Flutter. But if you're using large image, imagine multiply
that is actually
a 1080p image by 12.
I can say actually images and the way images have to be processed in Flutter web.
Yes.
It's complicated and it's not great on performance. So what you can actually do is you should look at specifying a URL that's particular to the image resolution that you need. Another option, although great, is still not as great on web, and that you can specify the width and height on the image widget, which will pass it through. But that's a software resize a lot of the time. So it only happens once. It's cached. But it's still, and it means that in memory it's still smaller, right? But it doesn't mean it has to be processed at least once, which is not.
There's one thing you can do. One is doing what is called memoization, which is do the hard job once, so you don't have to do 20 times when you get 20 images at the same time. So if you want to do the hard work of doing the whole pre-cache or like having different sizes of an app, do it before pushing to the server or something like that, if you're the one using it. If you're going to the route of getting from the server, you can use, for example, Firebase function. It can give you resize versions of the same image, and you can get several ones, thumbnail ones.
I was going to say there's actually a Firebase. What's it called? Firebase
function.
No, not Firebase function. They got that whole system now, like extension, Firebase extension. Okay, so in Firebase you can enable these Firebase extensions, and you just press button install, and it will install a Firebase function for you that will like resize.
It's a Firebase function, but it's the whole code made it. Yeah, when you push a new image, it will give you different sizes. So if you show in small little things, which are going to be max 300 by 300 pixels, do not show more than those pixels. No one's going to notice. Like, no one's going to notice. You don't have to look at a 1080p image on a little tiny square on your screen.
I've
Not
put the
even
link to the extension I was just talking about in the chat.
Okay, and in keeping with the theme here, this is, guess what? The documentation on this. Now, to be fair, this is under advanced UI.
Yes.
Make it bigger. Make it bigger.
Make it. How can I?
Can change the, there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Somewhere between the two.
Yeah, doing a custom scroll view, it's like doing a complex. Will be a recycle adapter for a recycle view in Android for equivalent of UI table view. These are not simple stuff.
And you don't have to deal with what they called. Oh my god, I've forgotten what they're called now. The view holders, the view holder pattern.
Yes, the view holders. Yeah.
Oh
right
god.
Now, there's a whole lot more to this than just Kate's. This is Kate Lovett. This is the presentation that she gave for Google I/O last year. But also a lot of these resources, you've got Widget of the Week for App Bar and List Grid. And one of the things that really helped me was this video right here, which when you click on it, it goes to the boring show about slivers. Many of you guys recognize Philip, but you may not recognize this man, who is the tech lead of the Flutter team.
You may recognize him on GitHub with a small little cat.
You may recognize him from such places as.
Yeah, that is Ian Hickson.
Flutter, yes.
Also known as Hixie. And you know what? I was shocked at how well Hixie explains this stuff. I want to try to get him for Humpday Q&A, but the odds of breaking the lead engineer out of engineering work to be able to come here and be on the show are probably slim and none, and I think Slim left town.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We do have I do have links to those in the chat, but again, if you go to the Flutter docs and you take a look under development right here and down to advanced UI, and then to slivers. And Simon can tell you, I just spent a day and a half digging through that.
Do not, and I will tell you everyone around it, do not attempt making your own custom slivers.
No.
You will spend days and not get anywhere.
Actually, Hixie walks you through the process.
No, don't get me wrong. I know that.
You don't make a custom sliver. You make a render object.
Yes, which is
make a render sliver.
Which extends a render sliver. But my point is, even then, like just dealing. So it's a completely different paradigm. You don't deal with like the standard box model. So you don't just deal with like size constraints and size. You're dealing with basically the idea of a sliver is a slice of a piece of scrolling content, and that scrolling content, as you know, can like be locked to the bottom of the screen, the top of the screen, and like hover and all these other things. There's a lot of parameters that play an effect on how that works, especially when it comes to caching content off screen and all sorts of other things.
Speaking of the parameters,
here's one thing
real quick. Just speaking of the parameters, to give you an idea of the way Hixie explains things in English, which I love. You have no idea how many times I read the docs and never truly understood what the extent parameter was, or the extent is how big the stupid thing is. It's height.
Well, it's not.
So, well, in the extent is where the bottom is.
How far it extends from its starting point.
Yes.
Oh, how far it extends from its starting point? You mean the length?
It's not always from that point. That's the point.
I can give you a very specific example. A lot of people complaining on Flutter Web why they're not as efficient as in list as a web. First of all, do it on web if that's the way you want to do it. Do it on web. Don't do it on Flutter Web because we have a way to do it. And second of all, have you checked how much RAM some websites consume? That's my ring bell. But check how much RAM consumes. Some websites consume a couple of gigs into your memory, so they're not cheap. Either it's taking a lot of performance in your computer, or they're going to be slow. In a way to do it on Flutter Web, use custom slivers. Like I'd say on Android, it's called the Recycle View, and iOS is called UI Table View. Those are the specific memory efficient ways of doing scrollable views. If you're not doing that way, don't expect to be efficient. because they're not meant to be efficient. The way to be efficient is to custom scroll view with slivers. Period.
Also, what was I just thinking? I don't know. Well, number one, Mariana, do you need to go get a pizza?
No, it's different stuff. It's not a big stuff.
I'm gonna share
So,
this.
yes, actually, I just did that too.
Okay,
The paint extent property.
This is like the biggest one in slivers. Yeah. Subset. Is the amount of currently visible visual space that's taken by the sliver to render a subset of sliver that covers all or part of the remaining paint extent in the current viewport. The value does not affect how the next sliver is positioned. In other words, this value is 100%. With 100, then layout would be 0. Blah blah blah. I mean, it's and then layout extent, how that interacts. So you have paint extent, layout extent, and then you also have a hit test extent. These are all the properties you get given to lay out your slivers. It's a complex beast. Put it that way.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is why I appreciate Hixie explaining it in English.
Do we have more questions?
Actually, one other point about that, though, and something that's important for beginners to understand, we have to pound on this one. Flutter Web is for creating a web app.
Yes.
Flutter Web is not for creating a website.
I mean, you can, but you're not going to get good SEO right now.
Yeah, that's true. And here's the thing: if you want to do something more institutional or something, use Webflow, use the Squarespace, use Wix. Those are meant to be no-code things that you can get really fast. If you want to do something institutional, why are you going to get to the whole work of building the whole thing with Flutter Web? If you want to do a web app, awesome. If you want to do a full website, use other technologies. Use Angular, use React.js, use Vue.js. I don't know, all those stuff. They were meant to be for a website. Here it's meant to be like a general use of an app. Doesn't matter whatever platform you're using an app. That's
the thing is, logic. you can put you can put a really cool app in your website.
That's true.
With Flutter.
That's true.
With Flutter, and that's like the New York Times Ken puzzle.
Yep,
is a Flutter web app.
You can embed those,
but they don't do the entire New York Times website in Flutter.
No.
This
not
would not go well.
Not yet. Maybe one time, sometime in the future. You never know.
Well, and the thing, there's some history there too, because back around 2013, 2014, they were hoping that Dart would be a JavaScript killer and take over and do the job of JavaScript in web. And it didn't work out so well for the performance. But one of the nice things about it is we can release to web because it was originally meant for that. But that doesn't mean it's the best
performance. I think it's also more about just the community. Like you have to get a certain amount of
people into it.
Yeah, people like what's the name for this? So anyway, just
critical mass.
Critical mass. That's the term.
Yes.
Critical mass. Yeah, you have to get enough critical mass, and then on top of this, right, is you have to get all the browser vendors to include it.
That's true.
There's a browser vendor out there made by a company that do not want this.
I think the other thing too was Chrome was the only one doing that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you have to get Firefox, and then there's Safari.
And Google even abandoned
as well. So
Google even abandoned Chrome because one of the things they were finding is that the garbage collector for Chrome was sort of fighting with the garbage collector for Dart. And so they were having conflict problems there. And I mentioned this yesterday when I was with Kevin Moore, Kevmoo. I forget what his last name is. Yeah, he was talking about the reason that Dartium quit, and it's. I said, yeah, it's because of. He goes, no, we don't want to go into that in a simple show. I said, okay,
no, okay. So we could be here forever.
Let's keep moving forward.
Now this is pretty cool. I can answer this question in 2 letters. Can anybody do it in shorter?
We can try. What's the question?
Depending on the language.
Some built-in widgets don't have basic options like rounded corners for dividers or borders with color gradients. Is there a way to promote these features to be added in the core product? And the answer to this is R.
All right.
Well, actually, I'm gonna push back on this one because it already has this.
Right.
And Container what we mean by this is I think the problem here is I'm not going to try and pronounce your name. But the problem here you have is that you're used to a system where, like HTML, where you have a style that you apply, and any tag can become whatever you want, right? A lot of the time, even in Android or iOS, the basic views have ways of handling touch. They have ways of handling UI. They have ways of changing the backgrounds and all these other things. Flutter is built as using composite. Flutter widget is built using composition, which basically means you have a widget for your box. There's actually what you're missing here is called decorated box. Is the widget that you want, and it takes a box decoration as its parameter, and you can give it whatever you want, drop shadow, corners, whatever you want. And these already exist, and
there is a big red flag going off in my head about one thing, though.
In these
go ahead, Mariano, you first.
Go for it.
I can give a better answer to that one as well. It's not necessarily a PR. Doesn't have to be in Flutter. Why does it have to be? Because you already have all the pieces in order to do so. This is in a specific case that you need for your project. Doesn't mean that everyone needs that specific thing. What you can do is go to PopDev, create like a general UI library with general stuff that you want, and then you have a combined thing that everyone can benefit if you think that everyone can benefit. If no one can benefit more than you, do it. Do it a general library in your company or your computer.
I was going to say, I will mention, you can just do, so there's now private pub servers.
Yes.
And you can also, and you can handle private packages now as well. And anyway, before this, if you want your own package in your project, you can do what's called a path dependency. So when you include your dependency, you can add path and then the local folder, and it will go to that place and get its project. But also just make a file in your project called widgets and put your generic widgets in there.
We have a Mac OS UI library from the community, which mimics the entire like UI from Mac OS.
It's the Mac OS one. There's a Microsoft one, and there's a Linux one as well, made by
so you can do the same. You can do general UI, cool UI, whatever you want to call it. Post it on PopDev, and everyone can benefit from that one. And you can skip the whole PR thing from Flutter in general, because it doesn't have to be in the core. The like every single piece is in the core, but it's not how you want the end result, and that's not the goal of Flutter. Flutter is to give you all the tools for you to make the end result.
Now, one thing that is going bing bing in my head, I used to teach some classes on the decorations, and you cannot do a rounded border if all four of your border sides are not the same. It explodes. So the way that I'm now, let's see, how would each of us solve this if we wanted to have a gradient in the border? I personally would create a container with rounded corners, and I would put a gradient in it, and I would make its child a container slightly smaller, or okay, Simon, a decorated box. I would make it slightly smaller than the one, so that it was only showing a pixel or two around the edge, and then it would look like a gradient border.
Well, you wouldn't need to switch it in any pixels, right? You could just put four different box decorations, each with a different corner, with a different shape, and they would overlay on top of each other. It would be pretty jank. There is actually a mechanism to allow for this. Can you do it with the box decorator? Yeah, you can. There's border. You do a border shape, and a border shape lets you put a different gradient on each corner, and it'll be fine. I think, if I remember rightly.
Really, because I know if you tried to do
one of them blew up before. I do remember that, but I think you can do independent corners now. I don't know, it's been a while since I've needed to do it, to be honest. But you can always just custom paint.
Oh no, you can do independent corners. Yes, all kinds of different shapes. But the problem is if you're doing rounded corners on a decoration, all four border sides have to be the same. Or there's an assert in there. There
was one originally. I don't know if it's still there anymore. I think it got fixed. It was a while ago since I've had to even remotely do that, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can turn off the border on one and turn on the others, but I don't know about X and Y.
Yep.
Right.
It had to come. It had to come.
If it's a stupid question, it's not. What?
It's
talk about questions we answer 20 times.
Yes.
A week.
And it's always the same answer. Which one is the best? Is the one that is best for you and your team. Mm-hmm. If your team is more used to more Redux architecture, use Redux. If you're more
Or
used
Block.
to, or
But
Block.
Block
If
is
you don't
very
used to anything,
Redux-like.
Riverpod.
Riverpod is one. You can
Riverpod's
use
an excellent one.
Qubit.
Yeah.
You can use. There's so many. It's like whatever makes you feel comfortable, as long as it's not the one that we normally don't mention, which creates a lot of drama because that's not a state management. That's
I
a
wasn't
micro
going to touch
framework.
that.
Sounds
It's
like
micro
no.
framework, which takes a lot of your app and is a different Flutter. If we're talking about real state management, we can talk about provider, we can talk about Block, we can talk about Redux and all different stuff.
All right, all right.
There's plenty of packages out there.
This could
try
be the whole
some,
show.
choose the best one for you. There you go.
This
Yes.
could-
No,
Best-
there, but
the
there,
best-
but
best
there
one for
is
you.
for beginners. There is something that's important here.
Yeah.
Set state.
There is a package that will claim to make everything super easy, and
Don't
it's called
use it.
GetX.
Oh,
Don't
you
use
mentioned-
it.
And the thing is that if you use it, you're learning.
You're not
GetX.
using Flutter.
Yeah, you're learning.
You're-
You're using GetX. You're using a
not
bunch of
doing
GetX
Flutter.
shortcuts.
Yeah.
Now, if you're just doing something for your own fun, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
But if you want to
But
work,
if you want to walk into a job interview
that's not going to happen.
and they start asking you questions about the Flutter framework, the only thing you're going to be able to do is look at them and say, well, I don't know. I use GetX for that. And they're going to say, well, good luck.
Yeah.
And they're going to hire someone else.
And there's something
Because-
really important. Build context is needed. And it's
Yes.
Oh my
very
God.
important.
Don't
It
even
Yes,
get me
is
started.
don't-
super important.
You
The,
know,
don't
the
get
thing
me a
is they'll
language
try
you
to
don't wanna
tell you
write a
you don't need
word.
context. You need
You
context.
do need, yeah.
I want to answer to bring this back. The second point: what's new surprises await us in the new year? Well, we have no idea, but what we
It's
do
surprises. It's
Have, what we're
surprises.
doing
read it,
together,
though.
hang
You
on,
can
what we're
read
doing
it.
together, we have this. It's called the Flutter
Yes,
Roadmap.
the roadmap. Yes.
And it was just launched a couple of days ago, and I put the link
Sure.
in the chat. And this talks about what the areas of focus are this year: developer experience, desktop, web,
Desktop
framework
into
and
stable.
engine,
Yes.
Dart, dealing with jank, and
New
then
shaders
and
for
they're-
the
and they're
janks.
planning to deprecate 32-bit iOS this year.
Which is
I'm
for
actually
those
really
who don't
interested
know,
in the new sort of display list
new
rendering
shader,
engine
yep.
stuff and what they're working on the engine. Obviously, that's me, but yeah, no, they're actually static meta programming is a big deal. Where was it? As mentioned here.
don't worry
Another
about the
question
whole
we get a-
32 bits for iOS. That means that it's it's iPhone 5. So it's
Yeah,
very,
it's
very old.
Yeah. And
It's really old. It's not
speaking
even
of
supported.
iOS, well, a couple of things. Number one, surprises in the new year. If they're talking about state management, remember another day, another state management package.
Sure.
But
Sure.
speaking of questions we get all the time, iOS jank, which you
Yeah.
saw addressed in the roadmap. Okay.
Yep.
Yes, we hear that one 1,000 times.
Yes.
So let's see here. What
It's
else
been a
have
while,
we
but
got?
it hasn't
Should
been
we
a problem.
go
at
to the
least
next
for me.
question in the list? I
I'm
have it
looking.
here.
I'm looking.
I'm going to bring up the next one in the list.
Oh, there you go.
Flutter Desktop Linux. Is there a way to any way to bundle the build into Debian package? Is there a plan for Flutter to permit us to release a Snap apps as in classic environment? Basically, at the moment, the result of building desktop app, I think, is a Snap, and then because I think the Snap thing depends on a separate library for Flutter. There should be no reason why you can't compile as a static binary, but you have to ship Flutter, your version of Flutter, in with your package, which is a deprecate sort of not great for the system as a whole because it means you're shipping unneeded code and libraries within your app, right?
That kind of violates the whole tree shaking compiler idea.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure if Flutter are going to release libflutter as a package on the systems. But if you can look at your package manager and find you've got libflutter, then you could build your app and just add a dependency in your package manager, in your packaging tool to build your Debian package. And then you're essentially saying, when I install this app from the Debian package manager repo, whatever it is, apt-get, whatever you're using, it will pull down libflutter as well, and then it should work fine.
Okay, we've got another one here from Jessica, and Jessica, I swear, been around a while. I am trying to remember where I know your name.
I think she's Flutter Organizer or
Believe
GDG
so.
Organizer. Anyway,
How
go
do
on.
we treat jank? And this is a good one. Basically, how do you check for problems? And I am trying to remember. I'll tell you what. While Simon talks a bunch, I'm going to go try and find a video that Philip did.
Yeah, there is actually so the Dart DevTools, the new DevTools actually has a whole performance thing built in. They built this in for 2.8 for Flutter 2.8. I think it was a 2.5. I forget. So you can use that tool. There's also if you're in oh, there you go, the performance view. There you go, DevTools performance view. There's also if you're using the IntelliJ plugin, it has a performance sorry, a performance tab, if I remember rightly, as well, that you can browse into and use. There's actually a great thing that I've done in the past. The Flutter performance tab in the IntelliJ plugin actually has like a monitor. I think the new performance view DevTools has as well. It's like monitor builds, so you can see how many times you're building and see what widgets are the hot widgets that get rebuilt all the time. So a lot of the common problems that you get with Flutter UI and slow jank is caused by unnecessary rebuilds. So what can happen? You can have a trickle down effect, right? You change a bit of state, and you don't realize you've got something higher up in your hierarchy, view hierarchy, listening to that state, and then it rebuilds the entirety of your app UI, for example. Now, what the problem with this is because the key or the values change, this state is not maintained, and you lose and have to recreate everything. Now, if you do that too often, you're just putting lots of heavyweight tasks for the app to do, and it will just feel slow and sluggish because it's having to do a lot to accomplish the rendering of the UI. So you skip frames. So yeah, avoiding unnecessary builds is normally the first step. If you're still having problems after that, it could just be that you're rendering too much, and there is actually there's actually an overlay that you can turn on in all the toolkits, which will give you how long your how much each frame is taking to render, like a little animated bar graph, and there's a line going across it. That's the 16 millisecond mark. That's 60 FPS. So if your bars go above the line, that means you're dropping frames because you can't render enough to produce it at 60 FPS. It takes too long to render. And at that point, you're just doing too much on the screen. And again, that can be that, like Mariana said earlier, that your images are just too large. So when it builds the frame up, it's having to push the data for the image across the GPU. And it might be, depending on how your app is. Flutter does a lot of optimizations under the hood for you. But it might be the way you've built your app is doing it on every frame. And that's just takes up time. And yeah, that also leads into it. Hey, look,
that's a really good video. That's a really good video.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there were actually two. You can look up Flutter performance tips, Flutter in focus.
It's Philippe.
And also, whoops, wrong one. Let's see here.
You mean for the iOS pre-cache animations, that one? Or
then Dart DevTools.
Yeah.
Which is really good. And this is on Flutter Day.
So if you post those videos and post the links.
Actually, I've got something even better. What we can do here.
Google that for you.
No.
Yes.
Come on.
Anyway, I think you pasted.
Yeah, sometimes some people try to use stateless widgets and all this kind of stuff. Using a feature in one of those widgets, but they don't notice how they rebuild because they ended up in an infinite loop kind of thing situation. And when you print on it, you will notice, hey, this is printing like 500 times a second.
I've got a question I want to answer. That Randall already answered that.
I'm looking for the URL. Hold on.
For what?
It's for my
sorry.
Let's see. It's State Builder Future Builder Stream Builder. There it is. So
that's another one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's better than a link to all those videos. All you have to do is put those 3 words in YouTube, hit the enter button. You're good. Okay, sorry about that. I seem to have wiped out somebody's. Yeah, there it is.
Oh,
So-
I answered this already, but okay.
Well, actually, I'm going to correct your answer.
Really?
Uh-oh.
Ah,
Dare you?
I
Simon
lose my
correcting
GDE
someone?
status.
What?
If anybody ever proves me wrong, I lose my GDE status. Don't do this.
Don't worry
Just
about it.
Don't
You know,
do this.
There's
No,
this
not everyone's
open
right.
secret out there in the world that Simon corrects some people on the Flutter team sometimes. And well, here's the funny
I'm not
one.
perfect
Okay,
by any means.
Yeah.
Please correct me
look,
if I'm
folks,
wrong. But anyway,
here's
I
a
will
real
mention-
secret. Here's a real secret. If you ever get Flutter and Remy in the same room, bring popcorn.
Flutter and Remy.
Because you're going to be sitting there.
Flutter
I'm
and
sorry, if you
Remy.
ever get Simon
guessing
and
I
Remy.
think it
Simon?
means
I'm
Simon.
sorry.
I think it means
If
Simon
you get
and Remy.
Simon and
We
Remy
can
in the
rename
same
there we
room,
go.
the
bring
website
popcorn.
simon.dev instead of flutter.dev.
Right.
Yes.
Anyway, come on. Right. So,
Okay.
There's two things. So one is there is actually new type enhancements as part of 2.15, which means T can be passed across in some generic situations, which was going to be problematic before. So that's a great benefit. But mainly it's about constructor tear-offs. So the trick here with this is that you pass the constructor for T into whatever takes your T, right?
Yep.
So T is your type, and then when you construct the object that contains T, you also give it the tear-off for the constructor, and then you just call that function, your tear-off function, as the constructor here for new T. So it's a bit of a trick. I mean, I'm not, but it's random isn't necessarily wrong. You can't just do new T like that. But now we have constructor tear-offs. You can pass constructors as functions, meaning that this is solved by that.
I can give you that one. If you read it as it is right now, you can already do that. It's an object. You can do whatever you want. If you
We
are
also don't use
building
new keyword, that's like
Yeah,
Dart.
get rid, don't ever type new, not in Dart.
No. But here's the thing. If you are trying to create a new object that then is going to receive a T as the one you're doing, don't use it in general. Again, just use object. It's the same thing. Use its instance of or whatever you really wanted to be focused on that T, and that day you use it. If not, you're just overusing generics because of the sake of generics.
There is. I will mention though that you do that there's reasons to use both mechanisms, and overusing generics can be a thing. But you have to be really careful, and that is because using generics gives you type safety. Using object removes the type safety completely. So be careful.
Big beginner tip. Almost never use dynamic.
Almost never.
For the love of God, never use
Anytime
dynamic.
you think
We're
you want
not
to use
JavaScript,
dynamic,
We're not
try
JavaScript.
object first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dynamic means I haven't looked at it. Object means I've looked at it and it's an object.
Well, and that's the thing. If you use var, then it's going to try and infer the type. If you use object, it's just going to give it a very basic type. If you tell it dynamic, that doesn't mean it can be any type. It means it doesn't have a type.
Yeah. It hasn't looked at it. It's like we
and
don't know
remember
whether the cat
that things
is dead.
go null safety.
Yeah.
It doesn't guess. The IDE cannot guess what it is.
VAR,
it doesn't
it
know
guesses.
because
There's a
it
bunch
doesn't.
of things that not to mention null safety with dynamic. We'll get there. Not right now.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and here's the thing. Dart not equal JavaScript.
It's true.
We need
No.
Thank God.
Okay.
One is a language and the other one is JavaScript. So
That's
all right,
perfect.
all right.
That's
Come
perfect.
on, come on.
I had this thing the other day. I have to tell you, I had this thing with some TypeScript I had to write the other day. No, you'll love this. Null and undefined. Like you can compare the two and they're equal. But if you use a triple equals, obviously you to determine the type, and they're not equal anymore.
Right.
So it's like, if you can't.
like I say, one is a language.
Why do we need another concept for this? You know, like
I've got a better one than that. One was designed in 10 days. The other took a lot longer.
Yeah, literally was designed in 10 days.
Okay,
what is that?
moving on.
Truthiness and falsiness in JavaScript is just nuts. Anyway, come on, let's move on.
Okay, now, Murad, I'm sorry. I hope I got your name right, Murad. All right, when you ask this question, This
Yeah.
is a sign that someone is pretty new to Flutter. It's not a dumb question. The problem is it's a tricky question.
Yes.
Now in Flutter, good grief. All right, look, if you look at the Gang of Four book, Flutter is using a few different design patterns almost all the time. We're using the composite pattern. We're using the state pattern. We're using the observer pattern. Okay. And that's not all. However, what you're probably asking about is the architecture, which is like MVVM, things like that. However, this is what your state management structures are doing. So really, it's how do you want to structure your state management so it's scalable.
I'm going to mention this again. State management is the wrong term. We overuse it, right? So
Yes,
we talk
do.
about design patterns, architecture, and management of my state as almost the same thing, right? Like you have to. There are different things, but a lot of the patterns, because of the way that your reactive UI works, revolves around state management. So that kind of gets the overarching name for everything.
Yeah, they've become mixed when actually they probably shouldn't be, but they're so entangled.
But if you're coming from Android or similar, it's closer to MVVM than other thing.
Yeah,
mostly.
I was going to say like also build context. The way build context works is very close to like a visitor pattern kind of deal. Like it's okay, it's not the same thing, but yeah, it's that kind of thing that you're passing it down the tree. You have access to this thing that can access the entire hierarchy. It's
It's
another pattern involved. Anyway.
Yeah, that's so okay. So let's actually answer the question for a scalable application. So we're going to check off set state. Nope. We're probably going to say no to scope model. Sorry, Brian. So for scalable, we can also write off getX. Not that that's state management. Then.
Come on.
Well, okay, so that leaves us with block we know is scalable. Redux we know is scalable. Riverpod and provider.
Yep.
Okay. And now of those, the recommendation now comes down to, do you know enough about any of those approaches, such as Redux, that you can get your app cranked out quickly? Or are you going to have to take a bunch of time trying to learn the system and run up your client's billable hours and make them mad because you're taking too long?
Yeah, one thing that I could say against Redux is it takes a lot of boilerplate in order to do something simple.
I've heard some things
simple. Use Riverpod.
Yeah, I won't mention who, but I know some people that have done some big Redux apps in Flutter, and there's regret because of the management and because how large the state management, like the way it works. Yes. Even if you sub off and have smaller state objects and so on and so forth, there's a lot to that. It gets unwieldy at large levels. However, to mention that, like, you can have large teams working on it, so there's payoffs.
There's when you need to be able to make sure people can't screw it up, and I mean I'm talking about when you feel it's important enough to make sure that your team isn't going to screw it up, that you're willing to put more time into putting together Redux than the whole rest of your app combined. Then it's worth it. But to give you an idea, Brian Egan is the guy behind the Redux that we use in Flutter.
And himself.
The one person who says the most that Redux is almost never the answer is Brian.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're not dissing on it. We're repeating what the guy who wrote it says.
Right. I've got a question here just saw that was further up in the chat, so I'm just going to slide back to this. Is there an it state for a stateless widget? He wants it to calculate some stuff once for a stateless widget. That's what a stateful widget is. You just literally just like people have this weird fascination with Flutter and like, oh my god, everything has to be stateless widget. Like, my state is elsewhere. That doesn't work that way. State is just state for your UI. It's like, it's local stuff. And if you're trying to calculate stuff, then you're doing state in your UI. That's where it should be. It should be a stateful widget. Right?
And another thing that you might be confusing here, Roberto, when you are doing an animation, you're calling set state a whole bunch of times. But in something like you're going to calculate once, okay, you have a state uncalculated, and you're not refreshing the frame. It's just sitting there. Then it calculates. Bang. Okay, now you have a new state. It's not rerunning set state every time. It only reruns set state when you call it.
You can do two stuff. Convert that stateless widget into a stateful widget, or you can do the calculation that you need on top of this one, but it's going to reveal the whole stateless widget again with the new value that you wanted, which is the same as using a stateful widget. So use a stateful widget. It's not. It doesn't kill anyone. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of it. It's not affecting performance in any way because you need to do this thing. So if you need to do it, use the effective one, which is stateful widget.
Speaking of performance and things like this, helper methods that are like, build my list of children inside of your stateful widget or even stateless widget, not necessary. They just had a big discussion about this with articles and everything, and Remy was a big part of this. There is zero benefit to using a helper method to build your widgets over using a separate widget that has its own constructor. There's no benefit at all, and you'd be a lot more organized, and it'd be a lot more reusable to make it its own separate widget.
I do want to just clarify this point. When your build method is called, it calls every constructor for every widget inside your build method. Yeah. So if you have functions that are calling more constructors, you're just rebuilding everything, right? If you have a widget that contains your part of your sub UI, right? The parent build, it finishes and your widget is already existing. So it doesn't call build on everything inside that. You're getting free caching as part of the UI hierarchy by using not using build helper functions and actually using UI widgets. But be clever about it. I mean, there's points at which you don't just do that for everything. You're not breaking up widgets from not using them again, right? Yeah.
And also keep in mind, if you can const your widget, do that. Because it only builds it once then for its existence with those input parameters.
Yeah. Okay. And for people who don't know, you didn't say make it a constant. You just said const your widget.
I know.
So what is consting the widget?
Explain, sir. Explain. Oh,
yes. You're a GDE. You're supposed to explain things.
I think I lost that status a few minutes ago by being wrong, but I don't know. Okay, I'll go ahead and isolate it.
The shades.
It's gone.
Okay, so yes. Now the GDE program requires you to be out here and teaching. So Randall, why don't you teach people what a constant is?
I'm going to say every other word, and Mariano can do the other odd words.
How dare you?
So there is the keyword const, and what it means is if the arguments you put the keyword const in front of a constructor, and all the arguments are also consts. In other words, they can be determined at compile time. Then you can make your widget essentially a const. What that means is that it doesn't have to keep running the build method over and over again every time it's needed somewhere in your hierarchy. Even if it's needed in 5 places in your hierarchy, let's say a particular divider bar or something. Once you built one, it's done. And then it can use that same divider bar everywhere. If you can get it, actually you probably can't because that's probably doesn't have a const constructor. Oh, well, imagine that there is. But yeah, that's what you're doing essentially. You're telling the compiler, once I build one of these, if I have the same parameters again, I can reuse that elsewhere in my hierarchy.
Yeah, you would know as well with the Dart analyzer that is going to suggest you to make a constant widget. If you have, for example, text that it says hello world, and that's it. Nothing else changes. Just make it a constant. Size of box, that's a really common one. If you want to have a space, it's going to suggest having a const, most likely.
Yep. One quick second here. A very important thing for this.
Oh, have you got something you want to show about this?
Oh, I thought I clicked the button. There we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Flutter lints.
Yay.
One of the most important packages you can use.
Automatically enabled in brand new Flutter projects.
Yep. Correct.
And actually, one other thing really about const, another way to explain the same thing that might be a little more beginner friendly. Basically, const is something that is built when you compile so that by the time the user runs the app, it's already built. And you can just reuse it all over the place. It doesn't even have a build method.
And
It's kind of
conversely,
like,
sorry, I just want to say conversely, what final is compared to that. Final means it's built when you access the variable, right? When you call the constructor variable, but next time you access that variable, it reuses the one it already had.
So basically, and what final means is basically if you set final my number equals to 5, you can only set it once, and then it never has to go through setting it ever again. Until you navigate away from that widget and destroy it, and then the next time you call it, you can set my number to something else.
Point, so the variable is a new instance.
Right. It's a whole new instance.
But you can have like a global final or a static final, in which case you can access it once and it will remain afterwards, right? That can get around the fact that sometimes you can't make something constant because something inside is not constant, in which case you should make it final.
But also don't treat your app as a PHP or JavaScript app where you have your constants and whatever in every single file around, because you will miss in your logic in your specific screen. Treat it as an app. App has their own logic embedded into their own screens and maybe their business logics, and leave it there. Don't leave it to the whole thing scope to be visible through the whole app for reasons.
Well, and that's the whole global thing. People coming from other languages too, if they hear global variable, like there have been some discussions about that, and when people really parse and get down into it, the idea of a global is not necessarily a bad thing. The idea of mutating a global is a horrific thing. Setting a global constant is not that bad.
There's also about the real one of the other things behind global, which comes from a lot of other languages, what I've seen in C++, is the fact that it pollutes your global namespace. If you have a global called page, you can't have another global called page if you try to import the two things together. But we have got solutions in Dart for this, which is like when you import something, you can say like show or hide, and you can also do like as. So you can import something as an alias, but it gets really, really complicated. So one of the reasons we don't want to pollute the global namespace with lots of globals is to not have all those hassles around imports and exports and how you do things.
Yeah, now new people are going, what the heck did you just say? So let's say we have a library that includes my integer, and Simon makes a global called my integer, and they collide. Okay, now here's the other thing too. If you also have my string and my integer in this library, if you call the library and say show my string, then it's only going to use my string and it won't collide. Or if you say hide my integer from the library, it won't collide. Or if you say as the library, so then now you have my integer, and you also have the library dot my integer.
You also have conditional imports.
The as gives you a prefix to your import so that you can avoid the collision.
And if you don't use that particular prefix, and which is interesting because always using a lot of people when they import math, Dart math for doing things like minimum and maximum, they will do as math. So you'll see math.min.
Basically, I was going to say, there's a lot of, so if you're importing any Dart library, things like math has a lot of global functions like min, max, sine, cosine. So again, you pollute your namespace of your file when you say import the entirety of math. You can't use a function called min because it's going to collide with the one you've imported. Things like that. So normally you do as math. So import Dart math as math, and then you do math.sine, math.cosine, or math.min. And it also indicates that this function is coming from the external math library. So you do the same with UI. So Dart UI is a common one. You'll see Dart UI imported as UI. And then you can use like UI.window and various other things to access the Dart user interface library.
Okay. Next.
I was going to, before we go on to another topic, I just saw this question that came in. Why does const work differently with list? Let me explain.
Ooh.
I think so.
Okay, and final. Final does the same thing.
Basically, you're making an instantiation of an object right? So if you do a const square brackets or a const blank list, you're basically making a one instance of that list, but it doesn't mean you can't change what's in the list.
Yep.
Right. So you're not making immutable list, and that's the thing. Const doesn't mean you can't change it, right? So when it means constant, it means it's one instance of it. It doesn't mean you can't change it. So what you're looking for in this situation is what's called a unmodifiable list. So it's list.unmodifiable is the constructor. And if you're trying to make a unmodifiable set, there's a modifier map as well. And there's also unmodifiable list view, which lets you take a portion of another list and make it unmodifiable. So there's various terms around this, but unmodifiable is what you're looking for, not constant.
The whole thing about list is understanding what is a null list, an empty list, and the content that it had in itself. And what I always say it as an example is take a music rack for CDs, for music CDs. So if you have one, you have successfully
if you're that old and you know what CDs are.
A list, yes. But if you have, so that's a big example. It's like, because they have an order, right? So if you have one, that means you created the object correctly. If you forget creating the object, it's going to be null because you don't have anywhere to put those CDs, right?
Be a little bit more specific, though. When you create the object, what is the object? Yes. It's the rack.
Yeah,
it's the rack.
It's not the CDs that are in the rack.
No. And it already has memory available for you to put the content on it, which in this case could be a CD, could be a movie, but they have the same size and format because you can put it there. It's an abstract way to think about a list. So this constant final rack is not the list with all the items inside. It's just the rack. When you put
about
the CDs,
a year and a half
where
ago,
you put it and how you put it. No, that's
about a year and a half. See, this is the lag between Argentina and Cleveland.
I was going to say, someone mentioned avoiding talking over each other, and we do try and avoid that, and we do try and stop and start. Probably have delay. There's delays and lags, so please bear with us.
And sometimes also it feels like you have to elbow your way in. And
sometimes
it gets a little weird.
Mostly me.
But about a year and a half ago, Simon and I were running at 200 miles an hour, and we hit a brick wall with our face.
What?
And this was...
How do you survive?
This was... I was creating a list, a final list, and I was using a value notifier. Value notifier triggers when the object changes. However, comma... I'm sitting here putting things in, taking them out of the list, and nothing's happening.
Not mutating doesn't trigger on that.
Because the list didn't change. And to use Mariano's example, you can pull things in and you can put them in and pull them out all day long out of Mariano's CD rack. The rack never changed.
Yeah. So that's when we were talking about earlier about immutable objects. You would make a new copy of the list with all the items in it, and therefore you've got a new rack, new CD rack, and therefore it triggers your update.
Now value notifiable triggers.
Another little trick you can do in that situation is make like what's called a list. There's list base and list mixing, which lets you treat an object as a list, and if you modify things, you can tell it to notify the listeners that the object has had an item inserted or removed from your list.
Okay.
If you wanted to know.
Let's keep moving here. This is an interesting one, and it's very relevant. However, I would have to say yes and no. And yes, because there's such massive demand.
Yeah,
there's a lot of demand. But the other thing is that everywhere I look, everywhere is so pressed for time right now. They're asking for senior, because they're in a hurry. Nobody wants to take the time to bring up a junior.
Like we could go faster. I'm telling you, I don't know.
I was going to say, there's other side of this. I'm reading this is like get a job at Flutter. It might mean in a Flutter team, but also they don't want beginners. They're not going to have beginners at Google. They don't need that. But more to the point, you won't learn Flutter. So we know this from other people that we know from that have been at the Flutter team, in that you're working inside the framework. You're using C++, you're using all these other technologies. You're not building with Flutter. So the chances of actually developing Flutter apps in the Flutter team is very slim, right? Like they're doing samples, they're doing small things. you're
And
not
they
going to
use
make any
companies
large
to build stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not going to make any large application with Flutter at Google, right? Like that. Well, they have, but you're not going to be on the Flutter team. You'll be at like Google Pay, which we know Google Pay is using Flutter, right? So, and again, like you'd be better off building something externally or going with an external company and building a large Flutter up there and getting that experience, and proceeding on from there.
What I would say is try to get contractor companies that they normally try to hire junior developers. They don't care the technology that you use. If you land into one with Flutter, awesome. That's one way to do it. The other one is normally startups, they don't have any money. So they give you an option. We can give you stock options if you work for free, which I know everyone
Usually
needs
doesn't
money.
work.
No, but for beginners,
but
if
at least you got
got
professionally. At least you got
if
professional.
you've already got an income source, and you're learning programming as your side project, or you're moving into software development, that's a great avenue of attack, because it means that you're going to learn it, and at the end of it, if that company does take off, great, you get some stock. But it's normally like for a lot of us in the community, like if they were to come to me and say, I say no, thank you, because it's like a tree. What's it called? Like a donkey carrot with a donkey, right? They're saying like you might get this, and it might be if I was to believe in the idea as much as the CEO, I'll go for it.
It's a gamble. It's a calculated risk.
But at least
it's an investment.
Resume, at least it gives you a resume, because if the app lands into the store, it doesn't matter if the company is making money or not. You have professional knowledge because you have done an app that land into
and
the
you
store.
can point at that app in your CV, in your resume.
Build a portfolio. Always build a portfolio. Best thing.
And if you're not doing that, you can also make a screencast series, which I've been doing. Very helpful because people can look at that and go, he knows his stuff.
Yep. So, all right. So, what more questions? We should get as many questions as we can.
One second. There is a little something here.
So, everyone, I have more duties to do during the day. It's always fun. I can be back,
what I was doing.
Have to leave right now. Yeah.
Mariano needs to go to meeting hell.
Yes.
Have fun.
Remote and actually, work, right? I may need to go and take care of someone here.
Bye-bye, everyone. I have to leave.
See you later, Mariano.
It was always fun.
Thank you. There was so I'm going to ask Scott, there's one here.
Directly to Scott. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, do you remember that? I posted the link in the chat.
Oh my God. Well, but here's the problem. Okay, that code is so old. It was broken last year. That code was written in October of 2018.
Yeah.
And it was written for fun, but as a proof of concept. And one of the interesting things about it, we were at DroidCon 2018, and every time the talks would stop and people would be walking past, would hold up the phone with this on it, and I'd be doing this. And what it is the app would stay upright. No matter how I twisted the phone, the app would always stay upright.
So you get more content on the screen when it goes to landscape and then portrait as well. It's an interesting concept.
It was. And the thing is people walking by would see this, and they would literally 1 foot in front of the other just stop, and they'd be leaning and looking, going,
yep.
And I can't tell you how many times people would say, what the something in the middle of the convention floor.
Guys, I got to show you this. Hang on. Let's see if this comes through. Hang on.
Okay, and actually, I need to take care of a puppy real quick. Something's going on. I'm not sure, but
there you go. Right there you go.
There it is.
That's it. I found the tweet.
There you go. That's what I was holding up as we were on the convention floor, and believe me, Android devs saw that, and you would have had to do that with what is it again? A bunch of. I know. I can't even remember.
There was but it's the thing. You can't really do this kind of like active UI layout stuff really easily like any other way.
I believe it's easier in Android now, though.
Oh yeah.
It's easier than it was in 2018.
But you still have to use Jetpack Compose, right, to really achieve this kind of thing. there's certain things that are just difficult. Anyway,
Okay,
so
I'll be right back.
That was back then.
I think the most important thing to remember when you're building this kind of responsive design, there's basically three main widgets, one category widgets. Well, let me just answer. So Layout Builder is your friend because that's going to tell you the actual pixels you have available. Please, any answer that is media query is probably the wrong answer. So get rid of media query, always use Layout Builder, although it does add the extra half a step of layout, but and Simon can explain that better. And then also make liberal use of flexible widgets, and that would be the ones that are row and column for the most part, in order to basically enable the right spacing. Never change your font size based on the size of your device, please. That's just wrong too. Any package that promises that is wrong.
Don't touch text scale factor. Don't touch the variable. Don't override it.
Yes.
You literally just disable accessibility on your app.
Yeah. So anything else, Simon, on responsive apps? I think that covers most of it.
I think it covers it. I think it covers it for the most part.
But especially the Layout Builder one. Because what Layout Builder actually tells you is width and height and any other constraints on the space that you have left at that spot in the tree. And that's what you want to know. You don't want to know the device size. You want to know what you have left. I mean, you might have a top bar and a bottom bar and maybe some side panels. You don't want to know that anymore because it's narrower now. So if you're trying to decide with Layout Builder whether to have one column or two inside, then you want to know what you have left in that space. And the nice thing is you can use it at any hierarchy level. So you're now inside a column, inside a row, and now you want to know what your layout actually is for that particular space. Layout Builder can tell you. You know, media query has no ability to do that.
I'm going to just plow through as many questions as I can see in the chat. And I will mention again, if you have any questions, get them answered now. Put the queue in front. We won't be going for much longer.
Right.
So get your questions in. Okay, so let's just smash through a bunch.
Sure.
I have a different UI for iOS and Android. If platform check is used, the platform is Android or whatever, I guess. Will the unused Android-related widget code be removed when the IPA is generated?
It's possible. Isn't platform check a constant?
If it's a constant, yes.
I think it's a constant.
If it's not a constant, no.
Yeah. There you go. We agree. Ship it.
Oh, it's back.
Oh, it's back. What'd you say?
Yes. Okay, now mommy's going to take care of the baby for a little while.
All right. Good.
We're
running through the final things. We're running through the final things. Let's keep. It's high speed AMA now.
Uh-oh.
Explain.
Oh yeah, we actually have billable hours to get.
You should make your application secure. There you go.
Yes, good idea. I concur.
So I will mention quickly because there's a very particular scenario, because Flutter is compiled to machine code, that is the native platform architecture code, it ends up being a big black box. It's very secure in compared to other platforms and the way other platforms build their code. So
there's no interpreted code.
Yeah, there's no interpreted code that way, so you automatically get that. Dart also offers an so Dart does ship with symbols, so we can give you nice crash dumps. To avoid those symbols, you can do Dart has an obfuscated build mode, and it will give you a mapping file which lets you sort of convert your stack traces back from their like weird characters and stuff to the English version, or whatever you coded it in. So there are mechanisms to do that. If you're trying to like secure API keys, well, you're shipping to the client. The client has access to them. At some point, they're not secure, right? However, yes, if you don't want them in plain text, don't put them in plain text. Encrypt them with a key that you ship with inside your app code. And in doing so, what you're doing is you're performing the decryption, should I say, at runtime, and it means that anyone statically looks at your binary of your app can't extract the strings. And in fact, you can try this yourself. So I know we're talking about security here. Briefly on this, there's an app. If you're on Mac or Linux and you have the build tools installed, you'll find that you have that is C++ type build tools, whatever. I think the package on Linux is called Build Essentials or Build Essential. You get a program called Strings, And basically, you give it any file, and it'll extract the strings from it for you. So if you were to take an APK file as a zip file, unzip it, and then put the code that you get through strings, you'll get all your API keys back out and all like anything else from an application. That's if you want to sort of get around just statically analyzing your app and not analyzing it at runtime, then yeah, you need to like encrypt or simply encode your strings using XOR or something that's just an extra layer of security. But there are specifically like packages and libraries and systems out there for like banking apps that do active memory scanning and all sorts of big security stuff. But literally storage, all your app storage is private to your app. So when you write into your app's data directory, only your app can see that. That is secure enough for like API tokens, login credentials, all that kind of stuff. Store it in your app's data directory. No problem whatsoever. You do not need this like secure storage hub package, which is terrible. So yeah, ignore that. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay. Let's see here. Tab view within the Sliver App Bar. I just spent 2 days crawling around the code for Sliver App Bars. Honestly, I need more information.
I
What
know
do
the
you
problem
want
he's
this
got.
to
I'd
do?
say with Dart. No other
Okay,
answer.
so do you think you understand the problem? That's the
No,
thing. I don't
I
I know
understand.
that I know the problem. It's not about it's about like if you've got let's say you've got a retracting header. So let's say you've just got like a collapsing bar, and underneath that you have tabs. The problem is each tab has a varying height, right? And you can't lay out all the content of every tab to get the maximum height to know if you can scroll up and collapse the header. So it is a complex layout problem, and it's something that we can't describe right now. There are workarounds, there are ways of doing this, and there are nice, efficient ways of doing this. But there's no direct one widget that I can point you to and say that's the one to go for.
No, this would have to be built. Yeah.
There is one widget that might be your savior in your particular circumstance, and that's nested scroll view. Nested scroll view will allow you to put a sliver persisted header or a collapsing header, which is called Sliver App Bar, in the return of the header, and then you can have a tab view in the content. However, it may not be the exact layout requirements that you're looking for, and in that situation, you might have to end up going down the custom.
And what I ended up doing myself just over the past couple of days is when you use the Sliver App Bar and it starts to contract, you can start and stop it at any point. What you have to do is you have to listen to the scrollable. One way to do it is with a notification. Simon and I were talking about that just yesterday. The problem with doing it that way is that your UI is always showing the previous frame's scroll position, but users are usually not going to notice this. It's just kind of bad form, slap your wrist, but if the users don't notice. But the other thing too is if you have your tabs on the bottom of this app bar, you can retract the app bar and then stop it while the tabs are still showing, if that's what you want to try to do.
If I have a page, and if I navigate to that page from another page, I want to do a network call. Should I do that in init state or inside the build method? Init state. There you go.
Yep.
That's the answer. Okay, let me be clear. And I'll make this absolutely crystal clear. Do not do any work apart from building your UI in the build method. Full stop.
Yeah.
Your build method can be called 60 FPS, 240 FPS, like hundreds of times a second. You don't want to make 100 network calls in 1 second, right? That's the way you have to think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the number of times a build method is called is completely like it doesn't relate to the code. So that means anything that is a side effect, that is anything that causes anything else to happen because your build method was called is bad to do. Full stop.
Right.
Okay. And another way to think of this, do you need to do it every time a frame is rendered, or do you need to do it when you go to the page? If you need to do it when you go to the page, init state. Okay. If you need to do it every single frame, like an animation in the page, build method.
I tell you what, people get confused with beginners, and that is when you want to show something as a secondary effect to your widget being shown. I'll give an example of this. Let's say you go to a screen and you want it to pop up with a dialog box. right? It's a very common case of that kind of thing. So you go to a screen and it pops up the dialog. Now, what you can't do is say show dialog from your init state, right? Or even from did change dependencies or anything like that. What you want to do is there's a widgets binding .instance add post frame callback. Just look up add post frame callback. You'll find it on Google. Or schedule microtask, both of which will basically do it after your build method's been finished. It'll then action it, and then that your context is valid, and then it will be able to build the UI and build the dialogue on top, which has to happen in the frame afterwards. Essentially, it's in the current frame, but after the build phase has been complete.
And in a beginner-friendly way, basically post-frame callback, it creates it, it gets the context, so now you have the current context when you are running whatever it is you want to run. So
there's interesting problems you get with layout in Flutter where you might need something to be finishing laying out to position something else. And there's some weird, very weird, complex layout behaviors you can get. Now, these don't normally become an issue on other layout systems because Flutter is a single pass. It goes down the tree and back up with the sizes. That's it, right? You try to avoid multi-pass. In a lot of the situations, you have intrinsic width and intrinsic height, two widgets that solve a lot of those layout problems. However, if you're still trying to depend on the size of another widget to size something else, what you're trying to do there is a custom multi-child layout or a custom single-child layout. Both of those two widgets exist to solve that problem. So you can do your layouts yourself. And if you then even can't do it with even those, there's particular situations that might be difficult, you can make your own render boxes, render objects. But yeah, like for most part, if you're coming up with these like layout problems and you're pulling your hair out, you're trying to solve a layout problem, so do it in layout, not in build.
I'd recommend for that there's a package called Boxy, Boxy.
Oh yeah, Boxy is really good there.
In the pub, and it was written by a smart person who basically put a nice interface over a lot of the stuff that Simon was just talking about.
No, actually, let me do this real quick on the screen so that people can see.
I was literally just going to bring up Boxy.
Well, okay, whose is that? Is that mine or yours? That's mine now. All right, that's not what. Yes, but
yes,
just trying to expand the package. Go on.
I understand.
Yes.
Okay, if you go to DuckDuckGo, okay,
yeah,
and you put pub.dev space Boxy. Boom.
Yep, you're right.
It will run a pub.dev search for whatever you want from the location bar up here. So you don't have to go to pub.dev and search for it. You just use DuckDuckGo and it does its thing right there.
Right, come. Next question.
Yeah, next question. Now, I've got one right here.
Oh, I'm just going down the list. Going down the list. Was it this one?
Okay. Yes. This is like a bank. Okay. You have to have money to borrow money. But no, there's a couple of things. One, remember, no matter what they're asking for, they'll settle for less. Period. If they're asking for 1 year, they're looking for a junior. And if they're asking for 1 year, the only thing they're going to want to do is look at your GitHub. Yep. If you've got 2 or 3 different apps in your GitHub, it looks like you at least somewhat know what you're doing. You should be in good shape.
Yeah. I was going to say, the best thing, again, build up, try things yourself. The key, a lot of people have this, well, I say a lot of people, a lot of developers have this thing where when they first start, what do? I want to work on a project. Start your own project, but the key is to have a target. I want an app that does this, that helps me do that, or it could be an app that already exists out there on the marketplace that you're making your own version of just for you, right? Now you've made a project and you've done it end to end, right? So you've come up, we've worked on state management, you've worked on serializing your data models, you've worked with Firestore, whatever it is, but it may seem daunting to think about this big project. But what you do is you tackle it one step at a time and only say, this is what I want to achieve. And you don't have to do it. Here's the key point. You don't have to finish it. It doesn't have to be polished. But what you've done is you've got a target in mind and then you go, well, what do I need to show a splash screen? And you go research that and then you look at that. What do I need to change my app icon? You go research, you do that. And each step along the way of you learning is you achieving some small piece of knowledge that you're going to keep for the rest of your career.
And
Yeah.
the thing is, too, they're not looking for a complicated app. They're looking for the way you write code.
Mhm.
Okay. They're looking to make sure that you're not using a ton of global variables. They're looking to make sure that you're not putting your functions in your build method. They're looking to make sure that you actually use proper doc comments so that you're putting documentation above your class names and for each public member and public method. This is what they want to see. You can make an app and call it Jimmy Buffett. Okay. And what it is this app it's the old saying, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So make an app that says what city it's 5 o'clock in. Okay, it does. That's it. Put a couple of pints on there. On the splash screen, you're good shape.
We
Just
did
do it
this
in good
before
form.
the show. This is the
No,
jokes
we're
we were
not going
doing
to talk
before the
about
show.
this.
Okay,
We're not
all
going to
right,
talk
good.
about that.
But I also want to say
That's not legal in every state.
one of the things. Okay, stop. One of the things that you also need to learn to do, and if you can do this in your search engine as a search keyword, is look for videos that have the word Twitter in them. Not Twitter. What the hell am I talking about? Flutter. Have the word Flutter in them. So videos with Flutter by recency. So that way you can search for
By
videos with recency.
How
old is it?
They are.
How recent they are? Because everything that's really old, everything that's over like a year old.
He means look for the newest.
Yes. Thank you for English translation in this episode. Yeah. So what I've been doing a lot of is I basically do a Google video search of Flutter and by newest, and then whatever keyword I have to find something that tells me how to do something. There are videos on everything now, really everything you could think of. So if you're a beginner and you want to have more information, that's the greatest way to do that.
Okay, didding next.
Yes, please.
Okay, this comes down to what we jokingly call the 3-layer cake in Flutter. If you update one item in a list view, does Flutter render all visible items in the list or only the one that changed? Here's the thing. If you change the key for an item, it's going to get re-rendered. Period.
Yes.
If you don't change a key for an item, I don't believe it should, unless you rebuild the whole list.
Okay, it won't get rebuilt, but it will get repainted, and it will get and by default, slivers are cached. Each entry has rebound boundaries on them, so they get cached individually.
And this does have to do with slivers because a list view is using a sliver list under the hood.
Yeah, sorry.
But
the point I think they're trying to make is does it render? Sorry to Randall. Does it render all these things off screen? And no, it doesn't. It only renders what you see visibly, and a bit off the screen. It's called the cache extent, and you can change that.
I was just going to say one of the purposes of keys, though, is if you just swap two items in a list in a list view, it doesn't rebuild either of them because they both have the same parental constraints, which is infinity column, but they have the same value they would be passing into the constructor.
One of the things that is kind of interesting is let's say as he just said, if it's exactly the same build methods being called with the same key, well then they've got the same value. They're not getting repainted, not getting rebuilt either because of the same one. They're just the same. They're in the same parents. They're getting essentially it's using the state. It's literally swapping the state between the two instances of widget. In fairness, is actually what's happening under the hood. But it's very clever. It knows how to do this kind of thing. So it optimizes the layout for you. I will mention, and this is one of those keys that we need, one of the key points that we need to mention always, one of the basic things. If you have two siblings, that is any sibling widgets, that is any widget side by side, that is like column, row, any scrollable container, any container with multiple children, if they're exactly the same type of widget, they need to have different keys. If they do not have different keys, you'll get problems. I'm telling you this right now.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be weird.
To be value key with a string, and that string is unique to the data of that object. But the key here is if they're sibling widgets of the same type, always make sure they have keys because you will catch yourself out on that one.
Yeah.
You'll be like, why does this widget have this string of this data and it didn't have it in my build method? It's because literally that's what it had before and it's reused it.
Yeah.
You know what we need is an egg timer. for each question. And actually, if somebody had only done a video about how to create an egg timer. Oh, wait, I think someone did. Anyway, it's apparently very hard to find on the web anymore.
Next.
Okay. Are there any plans to move to more modern navigation? Let me answer this one very quickly. There it is.
Yeah, exactly. Love it.
There are lots of other, and we'll mention this. There is Beamer. There's they all have their own ways of doing Navigator 2.0.
Yes, but none of those were written by a product manager on the Flutter team.
It's funny. Navigator 2.0 came out because it was supposed to make things simpler, and instead, what is generated is 100 different apps that sit on top of that.
Well, it's because it was. I don't know that it was supposed to be simpler, but it was supposed to allow you to do a lot more, and it does.
Yes,
but
it does.
It's one of those things that gives you so many possibilities that you choke yourself on all the possibilities.
It's what it's what they've done. It was
next.
They've opened it up for more access to everyone, basically, and that's what that was all about. Anyway, come on. Any more questions?
Right. Let's see here.
More knobs to spin. Next, here's one just came in. Let's see here.
Oh, I don't know. Sorry, I just put that one up.
No,
that's fine. I love that.
That was the one. That's the one I was talking about.
Oh, really?
Secure storage is not needed. There you go. It does nothing for you. It really doesn't. In fact, not all platforms support the mechanisms they use for secure storage. It also has it also has some security in there that is security by obscurity, which is also a bad tenant to have.
I thought that was job security by obscurity.
Yeah. Nice.
I'm trying to find the. I wonder they might have fixed it, but when I last looked at this, yeah, okay. I'm going to show this because it's been brought up now. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. And you're going to laugh at this, Randall. I'm telling you, they're going to laugh at this.
Can I? I'm good at laughing at things. Yeah. I'm really good. I'm trained to laugh at things.
Do you see this lovely string right here?
Oh, it's a in app string
element preferences key prefix.
Okay.
The magical security is to prefix all of their preference keys with a random string that's hard-coded in the package.
What the? Okay,
yeah,
I'm just going to stop. Right? I'm going to stop. I'll have to mute myself if I go any further. Okay. Yes. Right. Crazy.
And then that's the point here is, it's using share preferences. They do the encryption with the keychain, but they're not all platforms support that. You don't need to do secure storage. It's already secure. Your app is in a sandbox environment. Only your app can access. So not a problem. Just write to your local app's data directory.
I'd take it as the next question, if you can find it, is the one that Ashish Jha asked about efficient.
There you go.
Right there. You're thinking between the two of us, we share one brain. Oh, that's scary.
I thought that one was kind of vague. I need the other half. I couldn't figure that out.
The other half. Yes, right. Okay. So, Simon, read it, please.
Is it efficient when we write different code for adaptability in a single code base? Wouldn't it make the code size bigger?
And my answer just below that was, if you have selected your functionality based on a constant, then when it's compiled for was it runtime, the sort of ready to ship, it actually does tree shaking. And how tree shaking works is it goes down and figures out that there's certain code that would never be reached based on constants,
dead code,
but only constants. So it becomes dead code. Anything your browser would show you as dead constants, dead code. That code's never going to end up in your ARM code or your.
I'm just going to reiterate this point. That trickles down. So that means if anything in that dead code is being used, that doesn't get included. And anything that code includes is not going to get included. So it's going to trickle down, and that's what the sort of tree. Imagine like the whole idea of like a tree shaking, the leaves fall off, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's this idea of it will go through and make sure nothing's included that doesn't need to be included. However, let's say adaptability in a single code base. This is about targeting different platforms. Constants can help, but if you're talking about adaptability as in tablet versus phone layout, well, that's a small bit of code, and it also is minute. It's minute. If you've got like images that you're including for tablet, and you've got images that are like huge tablet images, and you're including mobile images, yes, you're going to increase your deployment size because they're assets there, but they're not the code base. They're not part of the code that's increasing, right?
Yeah.
And then that's all about how you approach the stuff, because you could download those and only download the ones for tablet if you're so needing of space. You can there's lots of ways around those kind of issues. Sorry.
Okay, so let me see here. Many projects use their own design system, material app, instead of widget app. Instead of building widgets from basic widgets, people customize material widgets. It is definitely recommended. There's, to put it in a very, very short period of time, people who have certain color blindness need to have different contrasts. When you're trying to touch a button, it needs to be a minimum size. None of those things are specified in the basic widgets, but in the material app widgets, that is all set up for you. You can go to material.io design, and it will go over a bunch of those things. And that website is right there. So you really want to learn about material design. It covers all kinds of things from, like, as I said, color blindness, touch targets, colors that work together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And we'll mention, just because you're using material app doesn't mean it doesn't work on Apple, right? Doesn't mean it works like just because you're using material app doesn't mean you have to use material widgets.
Right.
And you could use Cupertino though on iOS if you want, and it does. Those are called the human interface guidelines.
Yeah.
So there's lots of reasons to do it, lots of different ways. The reason for using material app is it gives you like a material theme, and it gives you other things that what the material widgets use. So if you don't use material app, you cannot use any of the material widgets. Like you can't use elevated button. I think elevated button's the material one. I forget now. There's a material button. There's a few other ones.
They have to get the theme above them.
Yeah.
So,
and they have to access certain things from material app. So that's why material app is used. And in fact, I think the Cupertino app they might have solved that with the widgets app now. At one point, I think it had Cupertino had widgets.
Speaking of
app inside.
Right.
Cupertino tab view with bottom navigation. How can I refresh that?
Just clean it off a little bit. It'll be fine.
The Cupertino, if I remember rightly, it's been a while.
Does it require
tab view.
I'll tell you what. While Simon is researching that one, let me touch on another one real quick because we are kind of short on time.
Yeah,
custom widget,
top of the hour, time to get going.
Or it's custom widget or helper method. Here's what you want to see.
Custom widget.
Well, hang on.
Oh, you got
that right there. You want to go to YouTube, okay? And what you want to search for is widgets versus helper methods. Now, Decoding Flutter is a series that is by the Flutter team. It is on the official Flutter team YouTube. This particular video was done by Craig Lebenz, who you may remember from the Flutter Apprentice series. Craig is a developer.
On this very channel.
That guy.
He is, I almost said he's a DPE, but he is a DRE. He's a developer relations engineer, not a developer program engineer, which is a job title that doesn't even exist anymore. But in short, widgets. Watch this video and learn why. So let's see here. Simon, where were we on that question that you had? Right there.
This one. So there's Cupertino's tab scaffold, which essentially does this, and it has. I think the point is that when you tap on the tabs in the tab bar, they want to reset the stack, the UI stack in the tab. I'm guessing in the tab view, you could do that. Like it's just an indexed widget builder inside. So I'm assuming you're just building a navigator in the stack. I mean, at the very least, just change the key and it will just rebuild the UI. Problem solved.
Yeah.
I can't see any particular like mechanism for this, but the UI itself, again, UI is one of those things. It will rebuild where required. So yeah, assign a different key to the tab that you're displaying, and it will just rebuild the UI stack.
Okay. So the reason we're pushing folks is we all have day jobs.
Yeah, but I'll get back to it.
Almost.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow I'll have a day job.
Go on. Wouldn't the obfuscate build option remove the hard-coded sensitive values from the secure storage that we just saw?
This
no.
is a continuation of what you were talking about. So.
Oh yeah, no, it wouldn't, because it's just a string. It's a string. It stays in there. Obfuscation just removes symbol names, right? So it changes the class names and the variable names and the function names and all that kind of stuff from your source code. Removes line numbers, that kind of thing. So obfuscation is just there to add an extra layer of protection, but that's it. It's just there's nothing. It's not secure in that sense, right? Like, if you want to obfuscate strings, you need to perform that logic yourself in your code, right?
I need to turn off my camera for just a moment, but I'm still here.
And yeah, as you said here, what about secure alternatives? No, use the secure. The one I'm trying to get is you can use that.
He turned off his camera, but not his audio.
Yeah, I muted it. The brain.
Oh, sorry. I interrupted you. Sorry.
Yeah. So use the secure storage. Like it's good. But what I'm trying to say is, for most people, don't need a secure enclave with a key store. I don't know. Honestly, I've not had one app that I would actually need to use a secure enclave or key store, other than a fintech, right, where they have very high standards. If you're getting an API key, like a login token, store it in your app's data directory. It's private to the app,
right?
But it's not private to anyone that's rooted the device. Whereas the secure enclave is private to anyone that's rooted the device, right? But if someone's rooted the device, it's pretty much game over anyway, because they can do whatever the hell they want with a real device. Right, and that's a whole separate issue of detecting rooted devices and all sorts of fun things like that. Detecting emulators to see if someone's like emulating your app, and I don't know, detecting proxy servers. There's all sorts of fun things. But all that is just going to insane security measures you just don't need in most apps. Like most apps, you don't even need secure storage. Just share preferences, job done. It's private to the app.
Okay, now. We need to hurry up, but also we're going to cut it off right now with any we'll answer the questions that have been asked, but we're going to cut it at 2:03. And that is because I have to go take care of the dog is full alarm. I have to take the dog outside, turn her upside down.
That's good. Right. Implementation stream controller. They store the state of objects in bits of integer rather than Boolean variables, and validated to store different objects. What is the purpose?
Bits of integer. That's not really.
It basically means you're using it's using bit masks and bit fields of integers rather than Boolean variables to indicate state.
Yeah.
For whatever state it needs.
Well, somebody's using bit flags.
Yeah, well, I use bit flags as well in certain things. There's certain reasons to use it, but for the most reason, the reason why the framework uses it and the Dart language itself uses it is because it's an underlying framework. It needs to like, if you built 1,000 streams, right, and each one was 64 kilobytes each, you've just 100. Yeah, that's 6.4 meg. If I can get that right in my head, like the memory adds up very quickly, before you realize it. Whatever. Anyway, the point here is it's an underlying framework. They're seeing performance gains, but for most like day-to-day applications, you don't need to use bit fields at all.
Yeah, a Boolean takes up a whole object slot, which is significant.
I believe it's 12 bytes. I think no, 16. You've got 8 for the 64, but I think they use compressed pointers now, aren't they? I think they're using variable length pointers, which are 48-bit or 36-bit. I can't remember. And then you've got the object type on top of that. So at least you've got at least like, I think it's 16 bytes of storage for an object most of the time for the two 64-bit integers, basically.
Okay. hang on, wrong thing. There we go. Sorry about that. So a random key, I wouldn't go random.
Just create an integer that increments.
An integer that increments. You could also take anything that's unique, like even if it were tweets.
I mean,
you could take the first 100 characters of the tweet and make that the key.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so this is, I think it's talking about the tabs again, the navigation tabs. Yeah. This is specifically about. And basically, the normal, one of the paradigms that's quite common is you tap on a tab, it shows the previous content. If you tap on the tab again, when it's selected, it resets it. In which case, yeah, just assign that tab a new key.
Okay.
Yeah, tab, like T, the number of the tab and the number of instances of the tab. There you go. And just have 4 integers, one for each tab. I don't know. There's plenty of ways of handling it.
Roberto, on this one, how to handle nested scaffolds. I've only ever seen one app that legitimately used a nested scaffold, and it's one I had to write. And the reason for it was I had a scaffold and I had a single child scroll view with a column in it, and it was a bunch of scaffolds. And I did this as part of a workshop on scaffolds so that people could scroll through and see different things, one with 2 drawers, one with the left, one with the right, with a hamburger, without, with a bottom nav. But you just, unless you've got something really off the wall that I don't know about, there's never a reason to nest a scaffold.
So originally there was problems with nested scaffolds in terms of performance and the way snack bars and things were handled and various other things. That's kind of gone away. They've optimized it out. We now have Scaffold Messenger, which handles nested scaffolds very well. There's a few other things around that, but if you're trying to just nest scaffolds, then you just don't want the one inside to take up like the same header room. Then just pass in, like, there's a parameter, avoid margins or avoid padding, I can't remember what it is, on the scaffold. I mean, you can do it, but the question is, why are you doing it?
That's the thing, yeah.
If you're just trying to do it to put a fab in the bottom corner, use a stack and put the fab in the bottom corner, right?
And you don't even need a scaffold to use a fab. You can throw a fab anywhere you darn well want. You could,
I mean,
make it a child or something.
Again, a lot of the problem happens when I've seen this before. A lot of problem happens when people are using the material app widgets in a non-material way, and they're going, "Why does it do what I want it to do?" That's because it was never designed for that. Make your own widget to do what you want it to do, right? It's easier than you think. Most people get it's just a stack or some aligned widgets or a column with, like, there's your content, there's your footer bar. It's that simple. You don't have to. The scaffold is there to give you the material mechanisms, like, as you said, like a fab, snack bar pop-ups and menus and various other things. But there's no reason why you can't do that yourself, right?
As a counter,
it's done in your app.
As a counterposition to that, I would like to say that people spent a lot of money, a lot of Google's money, figuring material out. So if you're not a brilliant designer on your own that can come up with your own layout for everything, just use material.
Yeah, Google paid people somewhere between $80 and $150 an hour. A number like 30 of these people, and they paid them over a course of years. So figure out how much money that is, and
it's not just that. Like there's
they know what they're doing.
Investment is one thing, right? And money investment is another, but time investment is another one. Yeah. Material design has been an open design pattern and system that's been around. We're on 3rd iteration now, and it's been around for years and years and years now. It's very mature, and they've come up, and as Scott was talking about earlier, they've come up with minimum tap sizes. You shouldn't overlap these things. These are expected behaviors. Like, there's a bunch of reasons for using material design, but again, it's built to a certain way. And if you want to enhance material design with your own things and it doesn't do what you want, then that's when you do it yourself, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, right.
Well, also real quick, and actually I've got a flow. Hang on. Well, I'll take care of that in a moment. As my partner says, my partner is in a regulation industry where there's a bunch of rules and regs, and she's got a point. There's always a reason. Okay, every time there's a guideline, every time there's a rule, there's always a reason, because people are lazy. They're not going to put the time in to coming up with something unless there's a reason they needed to. So before you go trying to do things in a different way, you might want to take a look at why things are the way they are. Either that, or you can just trust that they have reasons and that, they know what they're doing. So anyway, a continuation onto this, the random key is, here's the follow-up.
I just looked it up. Cupertino tab view has a navigator key. That's what you want to supply. So each tab has its own navigator key, and then navigator has a reset option.
We need to stick to the rules of the stream here, Simon. You are now sharing.
Okay.
Where did you find this? Okay.
I went to
How do we look things up?
Dev, and then I typed in Cupertino tab view.
You mean we actually read documentation?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Why would you do that?
And it says here, has its own navigator state, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, down here, you can see it. You pass it. Its constructor takes a
and in all fairness, you have to know. That's one of the things that I don't like about documentation in general. A lot of times you need to know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what you're looking for,
basically, for each of your tabs, you would have your own navigator key, and you do that by building one of these. You literally just do this: a new global key navigator state, and it will automatically fill this variable, the key, with the navigator state object, which is like the state of a widget. And then inside here, there's actually pop, push, and all that other fun stuff that you can do. Push until. And there, you can do things like push and remove until, and your root predicate returns false. And it basically removes everything and then pushes your new home page on the stack for that tab. And that's what you want to use. There you go.
Okay. Real quick here.
Just coming up on time that we
unused files, will they be included in the final app release?
I
Look
just
up
answered this.
Flutter tree shaking compiler.
Okay, hang on. I want to call this out specifically. Unused assets will be kept inside your app. You have to remove assets. Yeah, it says files, and I don't know. It doesn't mean code files, or does it mean like?
I bet he means
images,
code files.
sounds, assets. Yeah, images and sounds.
If it's dark code, it's tree shaking it out. Done. With that.
Yeah.
If
it's images,
If it's any assets or images or any other metadata that you're storing as part of your app release that's referenced by pubspec.yaml, like that, it's fonts and various other things, they will be included even if you're not using them, because you might reference them, and it's a dynamic reference, so it can't be determined at compile time. It can only be determined at runtime.
Okay.
Oh God! The next question down, I can already answer half of it. So
hang on. Which one are you talking about?
Shashank, just after that.
Okay, yeah. And Flutter Boy, I'll get to yours in just a moment.
Okay.
Go ahead with Shashank first.
Yeah. Okay. Good answer. More question. Do you use screenutil or something like that for assigning font sizes? What did we just say about that? We said our answer, which is do not change your font sizes. A font size of 12 points should be readable as body text no matter what size screen you're on. And think about what your web browser does, because we build Flutter web applications now. When you increase the screen size, the width and the height of your screen, does the font size change? No.
Hang on. This looks like Shashank. I'm almost suspicious that you might not understand DP.
DP.
Dependency. I'm sorry.
Device independent pixels.
Device independent pixels. Yes, dips.
Lovely.
Basically, no matter what screen size you have, if the screen is this big and the text is this big, then if the screen expands, so does the text.
No.
No.
DP is so Let me just rough this out. It is a difficult concept to get around your head, and
Yeah.
So DP is about device independent pixels. It's about the display resolution. If you if you talk about density
independent
so if you talk about
pixels.
pixels, right, you're talking about a fixed number of pixels. But for a given screen size, you might have more pixels per inch. And what you don't want to do is you have your font size change when your screen changes. So therefore, that's why you have device independent pixel sizes, so that your font remains the same physical size on whatever density screen it's on. Full stop. You have scalable independent pixels, or SP, and that is used for fonts. And that is exactly the same as DP, 1-to-1, except there's an extra scaling factor applied, which is your accessibility scale factor. So that way, if someone is blind or they're hard of sight, they can turn up their font size. Or if someone can read fonts that's smaller and they want more information on the screen, they can bring their font size down to be even smaller. And every app you release should be tested on the extremes of small and large to see how your UI reacts. If you get any overflows or any problems, you need to fix them.
Also, and here's another one. Our buddy Salih Goulier, Salih, he did a rather in-depth article on this. He did a deep dive, and one of the things that came out of it was never, ever, unless you want to be really mean to people, use text scale factor.
Yeah, don't override
it. The minute you do that, what that does is you are telling the system, ignore the user's accessibility settings. If the user needs a larger font, they won't get it. So, and then you're going to end up in the uninstalled zone.
There are some reasons to do or limit the text scale factor in certain scenarios if you want, but it's most cases that you don't do that. Like most cases.
Okay.
Right.
So one last one here.
Last question.
Now this may not be the answer you're looking for.
Oh,
okay. I have two answers. Number one, hard work. Number two,
yes,
golden toolkit.
Yeah.
What? Oh,
now
okay.
You are going to. This is the tool that will help you make it absolutely pixel perfect.
So
in fact, well, sorry, one thing real quick. I was working with somebody on this. This, in short, will take pictures of, like, if you feed it pictures from the designer. Yeah, for your test. And then what it will do when you run this, when you run your test, it will take screenshots of your app and it will compare them to the master. But here's the problem. This thing is so finicky, it's so touchy that if you decide that you like the way everything looks on, if you take the images and you say this is right, and I'm on a Windows machine and I compile and I run tests and it generates the golden images, and I say this is right, and I commit it and I push it, and Randall's on a Mac. And he pulls it down and he compiles that same app and runs it on the same goldens. Fact. The tiniest difference on the same Android emulators on a Windows machine and a Mac machine will cause the very edges of the fonts to be a little bit different, and it will cause your golden test to fail.
Right.
Well,
same code compiled on two different machines. One will pass, one will fail. So you want pixel perfect?
It's not quite that bad because Flutter does do its own rendering engine, but trust me, it's better than the native platform ways of doing this kind of stuff. However,
I've often seen this question, but in the context of how do I just get it so my designer says this should be 400 pixels wide, and I think my answer to this always is stop thinking that way. Stop letting your designers enforce things on you that way. You should be using
don't use numbers.
You should be using all the things that we've been talking about earlier about use layout builder for decisions about cut points and breakpoints. Sorry, thank you. Use flexible widgets like the column and row to do layouts. That maybe you need like a half space between these two items, you just say, give me a blank container, a spacer with a half point of flex, and it will work everywhere. It'll look the same. What you're really trying to do is look the same.
I'll tell you what.
And another interesting thing is tell the designer that you need this to look the same on 640 by 480 and 4K. So let's forget about numbers.
Right.
And and I need you to write this up in aspect ratios.
Yes.
So let me know when you have your entire design rewritten
I think
aspect ratios.
There's a certain amount of. So first of all, you were just talking about widgets there, Randall. Wrap is a widget that people underutilize so often. That solves a lot of the layout problems, right? So if things are too not wide enough, they get stacked on top of each other. Or if you make it wider, they go left and right of each other. That's where wrap comes in. It gives you spacing and all sorts. Anyway, in writing mobile apps, that translating the designer's design into actual workable code that works on multiple screen sizes and things like that's the programmer's job. Right, that's your job to do that. Wrap is spelled like that.
Okay.
Right. Dougie wants to go out. Right,
and
well,
with that,
here, thank you for everyone for joining us.
Yep.
And we'll see you in. We'll be back next week with some proper guests.
Say goodbye.
Actual guests.
Sorry.
As opposed to us improper guests. Yes. We're improper. Yes. Right.
We've been called a lot of things, but proper isn't one of them.
Yeah, isn't one of them. Right. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. Bye.
See you later.